Hello and welcome to the video review for the Power Rangers Super Megaforce Legendary Megazord. The Legendary Megazord is the Power Rangers Bandai of America release of the Kaizoku Gatai Gokai-Oh from the Sentai series Gokaiger. It's a totally different mold in terms of their toy version. It's as has been the case with the majority of the recent Zord releases in the US, they are entirely different molds from their Japanese counterparts. I will go through the differences because there aren't a huge number of them. For the most part, size, they're all scaled down a little bit. Not a huge detractor in my opinion. The big difference is that these figures do not open. Every single one of the Japanese figures was actually hollow. They were designed in such a way that there was a door on each vehicle that actually swings open and reveals a hollow chamber. None of these figures are hollow, they are solid pieces of plastic. So that gimmick is entirely gone. It is replaced by Zord Builder ports, which apparently is Bandai of America's answer to absolutely everything. These guys are still brick formers, as compared to a lot of other Sentai series. There's really zero transformation going on. I mean, that's pretty much the majority of transformation you're going to be doing in these figures. But they're not quite as bricky as the Japanese version because they aren't literally big hollow bricks. So in that way, I think they're actually a little bit nicer, which is why I ended up getting these instead of the import. Also, when we get into the actual Megazord mode, I will talk about it a little bit more. I don't think the Japanese gimmick is really all that great, so I didn't think it was worth the extra money. As for this guy, this is what is being called right now the Racer Zord. He's supposed to be some kind of race car, and the hand for the Megazord right here is serving as a very unconvincing engine block. It's a little bit more well done in the Japanese version, to be perfectly honest. It looks a little less obvious. Here it's just kind of a hand. What can you do? It's a big old Zord Builder port right on the top there. I have no idea why. You have fold-out Zord ports here and behind both wheels, and the wheels articulate for transformation. To transform this guy, just pop those down. That's it. You don't even need to pop this out. That's it. Just do that. And then you pull the little hand out, so it goes from here to there. That's him. Next figure we'll take a look at is yellow, just being called the Wheeler Zord. We haven't actually seen Super Megaforce yet, so these names might change. I don't know if these are just random promotional names. I don't know where they get half this crap, so. This one is, obviously, aside from just being a totally different mold and being scaled down, the main functional difference between this one and the Japanese one is the transformation. On the Japanese version, this entire piece right here is separate and actually unplugs and plugs back in up here to form the foot, which is not the case in this version. This version just folds up. That's nice in some ways because you're not dealing with parts forming, although to be perfectly honest, in my opinion, part of Power Rangers and Super Sentai figures is parts forming. They're not Transformers, so I don't really care about that. You also lose the ability for this front part to turn. You have no articulation up here at all, whereas the Japanese version could actually swivel side to side, so it had some kind of fake turning going on. This version, you are not getting any of that. It is stuck in a straightforward position. Like I said before, to transform this guy, you're just going to fold that up. You're done. That's it. Now, for pinks, why Why is Pink's Zord always mostly white? What? I understood it on the Shogun Megazord because we literally invented a pink Zord where there wasn't one in that series. I don't understand it in anything since. And anything since Mighty Morphin, I don't understand this. Is it just for aesthetic purposes? Do they think that too much pink would turn young boys off? Is that it? Are we still just scared of the color pink? I mean, come on. This is just a brick. This has nothing. There's nothing. Nothing. All it has is transformation joints, which is just opening those. Literally the only moving parts on the thing. It doesn't even have a fold-out Zord builder ports. I don't know why some of them have fold-out ports and the other ones just have the giant ones poking off the sides. I don't... Who knows? This ship has a pirate hat. Yeah, so that happened. They're just getting weird at this point. I mean, there have been some weird mecha and Zords in Sentai Ranger past, but this is weird. This has a hat. It's not even trying to hide that. I mean, it's not built into the back of the ship. It's not tucked in as undercarriage. It's just wearing a hat. So apparently that's where we are now. To transform him, you will remove its hat and fold these fins down. That's it. Oh, and he's being referred to as the Jet Zord, although that I don't know what kind of jet that's supposed to be. Now, this is the Big Mama Jamma. He's the guy who forms the torso. The Skyship Zord, which is my favorite in the Gokaiger line. It's known as the Gokai Galleon. It's probably one of my favorite Zords. It's just interesting that it's a pirate ship and that it's also their base, and I don't know. It does some stuff that is new ground. It's nothing spectacular. The American version is pretty much the same thing. I mean, there's a couple slight differences, but when it comes to things like these giant thighs being visible, surprisingly enough, that's not a difference from the Japanese version. Stuff like this bugs me. I've got to be honest. Stuff like this really bugs me. Find a way, guys. I'm not saying that you need to have these be separate parts that retract into the body or something. Find a way to maybe just make them look a little bit more like thrusters or something. I mean, at least try. I know kids are supposed to use their imagination and all that, but that's stretching it, guys. Come on now. To transform this guy, pop down this, spin this entire sail around and collapse it down onto the chest. You're going to want to come around to the front and split the entire front of the ship, which will likely shoot the swords, which are two swords pegged together. Got some nice pirate swords going on. And then you just want to fold these fins back so they're out of the way. And fold these out to form the torso. Then you can plug this into the other figures. And last but not least, Give him his cowboy or pirate hat. Cowboy. And if you did notice, he did have a kind of a bandana on even before you put the hat on, which is a nice touch. Gotta give it to him there. You can take the two swords, and they will actually store on his hips. And there you have the legendary Megazord in its Megazord mode. This guy's pretty cool. I definitely think I like him a little bit more than the Gosei Great Megazord. Gosei and this guy both have that kind of brick former mentality where it's just, you take this, put it on there, that makes arm. I understand that kids are being treated real simple like nowadays, but I think we can do a little bit better than this. I know these are designed for children, so I'm not going to sit here and say I expect it to be some kind of complex puzzle. But I feel like for like 25, 30 bucks, you can do a little bit more than just giving me a giant hunk of plastic, maybe with a fold-out fist. I mean, compared to some of the other Zords and Mecha releases in the past that had a lot more transformation and folding and bending and twisting going on, this is pretty lazy. I mean, the most transformation you're doing here is splitting these parts and splitting this. I mean, that's barely... I collect Transformers, man. I wouldn't even consider that transformation. That's moving something. I mean, that's pretty simple. So, again, that's not a difference between the American or Japanese releases. Like with Gosei Great, for example, the original Japanese version was larger. The headers had articulated mouths, but they weren't any more complicated in terms of transformation. They didn't really have anything else going on that the American releases don't. For whatever reason, the last couple of years have just been pretty blah. The second newest, the series that just ended, not Tokyo-Jur, but Kyo-Ryuger, I think. Yes, the one with dinosaurs. I haven't started collecting those yet. I have one or two of those guys on the way. Those seem like they have a little bit more going on. It's still like Stegochi is still just a giant Stegosaurus that you kind of plop onto the side of the dude. So it's not like they're super complicated, but it does seem like at least the main chest, Gabutira, has a little bit more going on. So I look forward to that. I like combining stuff, so this is still a cool figure. It's just not as cool as it could be. It could be a little bit more complicated. I'm not asking for much, but I'm a little bit more than just plunking a big brick onto the side and calling it an arm. It's still neat. The other big difference between the Japanese and the American release, like I was saying before, is that none of these guys open. So one thing that I haven't talked about yet is the Ranger key that comes with this guy. And that is used to open this front chest. Now, on the Japanese version, this whole part right here just turned, and every time you turned it, it would pop open a door very similar to this on each one of the limbs. And every single limb had its own separate trapdoor that popped open. And you could either open them one by one or turn it the other way and open them all at once. And what this allows is the auxiliary Zords... Right, sorry about that, my camera died. What this allows for is the auxiliary Zords that are returning from some older Sentai / Power Rangers series, like the Magi Dragon, to combine with this figure. And they're not the original molds of those. They're kind of redesigned interpretations of them, designed specifically to combine with this, but they are based on the mecha or Zords from the older series. For example, the Magi Dragon is an actual figure that is about that big. It's not made up of separate Zords. It's a singular figure that I believe, I don't actually have it, but I'm fairly certain it uses Zord Builder ports to connect itself together, and then you just take it apart, and instead of whereas on the Japanese version you actually would insert the pieces into the holes, in the American release you're just going to insert the main chest piece, and the rest are going to attach using Zord Builder ports. So, I guess there's positives and negatives to that. On the positive side, if you have the Japanese release, you can actually close the doors. You can load them all up with your respective mecha. So you could load them all up with the Magi Dragon, close it up, and then turn that and have all of the different parts spring out. And they're actually kind of spring-loaded, so the wings would pop out and kind of extend themselves. And it's definitely a cool effect. The downside of that is that each of the actual individual mecha is very hollow and kind of chunky. At least these guys they were able to get a little bit of definition out of in the arms here. These on the Japanese version are much blockier looking because they are actually giant hollow bricks that have a door that opens up. So it's kind of a trade-off. There are definitely a lot of Sentai series or Ranger series that I think the Japanese versions are much better. I don't think this is one of them. I don't think this is one of them, and I don't think that the Gosei Great Megazord was necessarily better in Japan. The headers had articulated mouths and it was a little bigger. Having the extra tailpiece was nice, but I mean, I think it's like this here, where it's a trade-off. If you're just going to be displaying this and it's just going to be sitting on your shelf, I don't necessarily care about the spring-loaded feature and all that stuff because I'm not going to be using that. That's a great feature for kids or whatever, but that's not necessarily something I care about a whole lot. Where I do care is that it looks a little better. The way that the auxiliary Zords attach on the American version, I've seen pictures of it, I've seen a couple reviews. Compared to the way it works on the original Japanese release, it's just not as visually appealing. I won't say it's necessarily ugly, but it doesn't look as good. Then again, it's also substantially cheaper, so it's really a trade-off here. I don't necessarily think it's a huge value to go for the Sentai release versus the Rangers release on this. There are definitely series that I would say the exact opposite and say that I would sooner not get one at all than get the Power Rangers. I mean, I wouldn't touch the Drive Max Megazord with a 300-foot pole, but I digress. This is a good Megazord, I think. I'm disappointed because there's still just a total lack of transformation, and that kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth because you're barely doing any parts forming. I mean, you're literally just plugging the limbs in. That's really all you're doing with this figure. It wasn't expensive, so I'm not super concerned with it. I do think it looks cool. It's accurate to the way he looks in the show, so I'm not worried about that. But I do think it could have been a little more interesting. Anyway, this is the Power Rangers Legendary Megazord. And he's pretty good. He's decent. Not great, but decent. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.